Hey, Ben from Lover of Tech, and welcome back to the channel. This is another camera comparison on the Lover of Tech channel. This is between the OnePlus 6T versus the iPhone XS Max. Double the price, but you get double the performance. We're going to test these cameras in different lighting situations and also to see how they perform. And first, we're going to start with the front-facing specifications. The OnePlus 6T has a 16 megapixel selfie camera that takes video in 1080p 30 frames a second, and it has an f2.0 aperture, whereas the iPhone X has a 7 megapixel eyesight camera with f2.2 aperture that takes video up to 1080p 60 frames a second, and both look to have stabilization. So we're just going to actually have a look at how they perform, the lighting, the dynamic range, the sharpness, the detail, and also the stabilization. So we're just going to walk around. Let's take a look. Walk around, basically just have a look. And take a run. Small run. Come around again, take a small run. And see how they are stabilized and how they look. Now switching over to the 1080p 60 frames a second video recording mode on the iPhone XS Max versus the 1080p 30 frames a second on the OnePlus 6T. We're just seeing how the exposure, the sharpness, the stabilization is affected on the XS once you switch to 60 frames a second on the front-facing camera. Small run. Turn around and just walk it. So this is a quick rundown of the main camera specifications on both these phones. The OnePlus 6T has a dual camera system at the back. The main camera is a 60 megapixel camera with an f1.7 aperture, followed by a 20 megapixel camera with an f1.7 aperture, both are 25 millimeters, and the camera shoots up to 4K 60 frames a second, 1080p 240 frames a second slow motion, as well as 720p 480 frames a second slow motion. The iPhone XS Max has a dual 12 megapixel camera setup. The main one is a wide 26 millimeter f1.8 aperture camera, as well as a zoom telephoto at 52 millimeters, which has an f2.4 aperture, shoots up to 4K 60 frames a second, and 1080p video at 240 frames a second. Now, a detailed spec layout of both these rear cameras and the front-facing camera will be in the description below. Everything has been set to automatic. So let's get to the main camera test, starting with daylight video. Now we're in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorded mode between the OnePlus 6T and iPhone XS Max. In daylight, we're just seeing how the dynamic range, the sharpness, the detail, and the stabilization looks like. Both these cameras have a times 2 zoom mode, so we're going to times 2 zoom, and see how they behave. Now we're still in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recording mode, and we're now going to test the stabilization by doing a small run. Still in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recording mode. We're going to test both these cameras in their times 2 configuration. Times 2 zoom, times 2 zoom. And let's see how the stability is like while we take a run. Now we'll switch over to the 4K UHD 60 frames a second video recording mode. We're just going to see how the stability, as well as the image quality, the dynamic range, and the sharpness changes. Now in the 1080p 30 frames a second video recorder mode, we're just going to take a walk, see how the stability and image quality is like, followed by a small run. Now we are in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recording mode between the iPhone XS Max and the OnePlus 6T. Again, we're just testing out the low light performance, image quality, and stabilization. Now both these have times 2 zoom mode, so what we're going to do is stop, times 2 zoom, times 2 zoom. See how the image quality and the stabilization is affected when you times 2 zoom on both phones. Now we are in the 4K UHD 60 frames a second video recording mode on both the iPhone XS Max and the OnePlus 6T. Seeing how the image quality, especially in low light, is performing and impacted Switching over to the 1080p 30 frames a second video recording mode on both the iPhone XS Max and the OnePlus 6T. Now let's switch to the times 2 zoom mode. Times 2 zoom, times 2 zoom. See how the stabilization and the low light is performing and impacted. Now we are in the front-facing camera for both the iPhone XS Max and the OnePlus 6T. In 1080p 30 frames a second. Checking out the image quality, low light performance, and the stabilization is both are looking decent, but we'll have to look at the footage and see. Alright, so let me give you my conclusion on this camera comparison between the OnePlus 6T and the iPhone XS Max. The iPhone XS Max with the 1080p 60 frames a second video recorder mode on a selfie camera is a really nice touch, and its improved stabilization is really good on the selfie camera, but it does come at the sacrifice of a crop. It also has better dynamic range and color rendition, especially when it comes to the skin tones and the surrounding colors and the light exposure, but the sharpness on the 6T is slightly better to my eyes. And it's something that you just kind of have to take into account when you look at both and which one you prefer. And when you flip over to the main cameras, the iPhone XS to me has slightly better image stabilization in all the video recording modes, especially when zoomed in and running. You can definitely see that this is where the difference is. But at the price, the OnePlus 6T really holds up well, especially with the electronic image stabilization implementation being used when you're recording video. Now, low light performance is one of the places where you can really see a big difference, and this definitely favors the iPhone XS Max. Now, although the 4K 60 frames a second in low light is better on the iPhone XS, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using 60 frames a second at low light at all for any recording mode, but low light definitely does favor the iPhone XS Max. But also on the flip side, when you come to the low light selfie video recording mode, the iPhone doesn't actually do that well. The OnePlus 6T is actually the phone that does well in this particular one when I was looking at it, so that's a really good surprise there. Now, I have to also give props to the OnePlus 6T. I really do like the fact that there is a 480 frames a second at 720p super slow motion that is so easy to record, and it records up to 1 minute. This is something I really want to see on future iPhones, because iPhones do have the processing power. Yes, it's a party trick, but it's a really nice party trick that you can really show the power of it. But on the flip side, when it comes to the 1080p 240 frames a second slow motion mode, the iPhone is much better, less artifacting, much sharper image, much brighter image, better exposed compared to what you're seeing on the OnePlus 6T. I really wasn't liking what I was seeing there. It's really dark, it's not that sharp, and there's a lot of artifacting around my face. So that is the roundup conclusion for this camera comparison on the video side. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Which one was your favorite, and what you think of the outcome of this test. And also stay tuned, I will have the photo comparison coming afterwards as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're part of Team Tier List Tech Lover Squad, so you do not miss any new content that's posted on the Lover of Tech channel. I'm your host Ben, signing out, and trust me, you will see me next time.